Normally, with this topic, one would expect it to be excruciatingly boring. So I'd like to thank you for being here and taking the leap of faith. What I'm going to talk about today is values in the context of my own experience, my own reality. I've made many mistakes along the way. I've learned a few things, and I've been lucky. I've had some success with 5 startups, 400,000 customers, over 100 million pounds a year of net revenues, and all the companies have been profitable within 4 years. Those that have been around long enough. So values. If I were to ask you, what are the values that you aspire to have within your companies, it would look something like this. And the problem with values is there's a lot of lip service given to values. Companies put it in their literature, it's on posters, it's everywhere, and yet it's also very meaningless, because ultimately there's very few companies that actually live and breathe values. I'm sure your companies do, but because you're startups. It's easier when you're small. It's a lot more difficult as you grow. And that's because values start with the founders, and it starts on day one. So the closer you are to that, the more you can establish the values. So very obvious, but very few businesses can actually live and breathe values. I'd like to park that for a minute and talk about Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker was one of the greatest management gurus of all time. And one of the less popular phrases that he coined was the way they built the pyramids. And it's a metaphor for a management style. And the way they built the pyramids was they had very clear goals. If 3 slaves couldn't move a big stone, they would whip 2 of them to death, and the 3rd one would move the stone. So there was a lot of fear involved, but you snicker, but it was an extremely effective management style. They built one of the greatest masterpieces that ever existed. So we're going to park the pyramids. I'm going to come back to that. I want to talk about Xerox. Xerox, back in its day, not today, was one of the greatest companies that was ever around. When you think that without Xerox there wouldn't be the internet, these guys invented the PC, the mouse, Windows, Ethernet. It's incredible. They really got culture down right back then. And I want to talk about something that really exemplified the values at Xerox back in the day. And it was their expense report policy. At Xerox, when you filled out an expense report, at the bottom of the expense report, this is back in the 90s, you had a perforated check. And it was pre-signed up to a few £1,000s. All you had to do was fill in the numbers, go cash the check, give the top part to accounts, and everyone was happy. You got paid quicker, accounts had their piece done, and it worked really well. So I'm going to need your help here, and I really want you to play along. I'd like all of you to stand up. We're going to pretend that each of you is my manager, and I'm an employee at Xerox who has cashed a £2,000 check. And it wasn't for business use. It's definitely, it was an abuse of the policy. So you find out, and you have 2 choices. We're going to keep it simple. You can sack me, or you can give me the lesson of my life and give me a second chance. So give me, coming to Jesus meeting, and just make sure it never happens again, but I get a second chance. If you would sack me, remain standing. If you would give me a second chance, please sit down at this point. It's about what I expected, close to half. remember who you are, those of you who are sitting right now, because I'm going to rewind back to you. So just the people who are sitting now, I'm going to come back to you. The rest of you remain standing. Now you go back to your office, you look at the numbers, and you realize, wait a minute, this George guy, we've got 10 sales guys. This one guy is bringing in 80% of the sales of the business. Now, knowing that, if you would sack me, remain standing. If you would give me a second chance, please sit down. Now you call me into your office and you say, hey George, what is this? Why? And I say, look, I put my hand up. I'm really sorry. It was a lapse of judgment, but just hear me out. I've had a really bad month. My wife left me. I've got a roof that's leaking, and my foundation is the price of the house is just going down the tubes, and I've got a child in hospital. It won't ever happen again. I'm really sorry. If you'd still sack me, remain standing, otherwise sit down. Okay, great. Everybody can sit down. We're going to rewind to the first batch of people who gave me a second chance. You stand up. Now let's pretend you didn't hear any of what happened since you sat down, okay? You go back and look at the numbers in the office and you realize, wow, this guy he's not one of our best sales guys. I've got 10 sales guys. He's bringing in 4% of the sales. Now, if you would sack me, please sit down. If you would continue to work with me and give me a second chance, remain standing. Good. You call me into the office and you say, George, why? And I say, you know what? I've been here 3 years. I'm looking for, yeah. This is where I usually lose most of the women in the room. Look, I was in Vegas with my mistress, and I was at the roulette table, lost some money, and just wrote myself a check. So what's the big deal? I've been here 3 years. I'll pay it back. That's what you want. If you would sack me, sit down. Otherwise, remain standing. Okay, good. What did Xerox do? They would sack you. What do we do in our business? You can sit down. We don't even think about it. It's the minute we find out that it's wrong, we're done. So if that's the case, then what's the difference between the way they built the pyramids, which is a metaphor, and this? The way they built the pyramids was you kill 2 slaves, and the third one, it's a deterrent to the third one who learns that, hey, that's how I'll end up if I don't move the stone. Here, you sack the person so that everybody else can see them and go, you know what? That's what happens if you break the rules and you're not honest. Let's park Xerox as well. I'm going to come back to the pyramids and Xerox. I want to talk about Jack Welch. I imagine most of you know who Jack Welch is. He CEO of GE for a long time. Lots of things that he believes in that I don't agree with. But there's one thing that I really like about his philosophy, and that is he says everyone in a business can fit into one of 4 different slots. And these 4 permutations of either they generate results or don't generate results, and that's performance-based. And then they have the values or they don't have the values. Now, the no-brainer here is no values, no results. Yeah, even your local council can deal with that really quick, and everyone would agree. The local little bank branch will agree with you on that. So no need to waste time on Ds. Everybody agrees on what to do with Ds. Everybody also agrees on what to do with As. They have the values, they create results. These are your rock stars. You need to take care of them. You need to push them to the edge of their comfort zones because they thrive on that. They're rare. You need to invest in them, pay them well, do everything you can to keep them. Again, no-brainer. The Bs are a bit more difficult. These are people who have the values but can't generate results. It's the salesperson who works really hard but can't make the sales. It's the accountant who works long weekends. Everybody likes the person. They're honest. They've got all the values are there. But your accounts aren't done on time at the end of the month. And they're sloppy. It's the coder who writes sloppy code, who's a nice person, who's got all the right values. What do you do with this person? And you may look at your business and say, look, we're like a family. We've got to stick together here. We've got to help this person out or cut the person some slack. And the fact is, you're working, all of you are trying to disrupt a market. The odds are against you. And so you cannot have anyone sit in that B position for long. And so what we do in our business is we can't have Bs and still achieve what we need to achieve. And so we're not a family, we're a team. And the difference is, think of a Premier League team where the goalkeeper lets too many goals in. If you don't up their game, the goalkeeper's game, or change them out, you're going to be relegated. And that's the difference between team and family. So, what do we do with B players? It's the most difficult thing about running our business. It's you either help them become an A, and you do that through training and mentoring, so you give them skills that they're missing, or if you can afford it, you look at what skills they do have and put them in a role where they can be more successful. And we owe that to our employees as a management team. And if you can't do that, then you need to help them move on. And we do that with recruiters. We do that we help them move on to a place where they can be happy. The most difficult one to deal with is the C player. The C player this is a salesperson who's bringing in 80% of the sales, but cheated on their expense report. Very often, the results that the C player is creating are not real. It may be that their plan is low. These people spend more time negotiating plan than actually achieving it. And they're very often people who take credit for other people's work. They're people who are information bottlenecks. You can't talk to the boss unless it goes through me. They're filters within an organization. They hold you hostage. If I leave, the rest of the team will leave. If I leave, the customer will leave. They create black boxes. The system's really difficult. Only I know how to use it. Or the code. Only I understand the code. Without me, you're in trouble. They're extremely political animals. That's what they do best. They spend more time on politics than actually doing the work. Now, all of us have known C players, and if you can think of a C player, I guarantee you it's somebody that you have worked for, because it's hell being underneath a C player. But if you're above them, you probably don't know that they're there. So the people you think of are always people you've worked for and not people who work for you. So let's go back to the pyramids. And I tricked you earlier. I said, isn't the way they built the pyramids the same as sacking the person who doesn't have the values? It's not the same. We don't sack the person as a deterrent to everybody else, to get everybody else in line. The reason we do that is because we've just found out this person doesn't have the values. And values are something that are very internal to who you are. Your values, your core values, come from when you're 8 years old, 10 years old, from your parents, your grandparents, your teachers. So we can't teach you values when you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old in a business. That's something that's too difficult to do. It's easier to teach you skills, if you have the values, than the other way around. So as soon as we find out you don't have the values, we're done. And this is where, earlier, the reason we went through the exercise where you guys were standing up and sitting down was, I was trying to demonstrate to you that this is the theory is easy, but when you're faced with a difficult decision, you not only disagree with each other, you disagree with yourself. Because I gave you irrelevant bits of information each time. The fact was, I was broken. I had rotten values. But I gave you additional information that made you change your decision, and you started sitting down as I gave you additional irrelevant bits of information. So this model makes it real simple. And as a result, we've sacked some of our top salespeople. We've sacked some really people who appear, who probably did perform pretty well, whether it was real or not. But if they don't have the values, we cannot build a strong company on top of that. So how you deal with B's and C's is what differentiates the many mediocre companies from the few amazing ones. And that's where we focus most. The rest is pretty much a no-brainer. With the kind of businesses that we're running, if you're an entrepreneur today, you're disrupting an existing model. And the only advantage we have against all the big guys, the incumbents that we're trying to disrupt, is speed. It's the speed at which we innovate, it's the speed at which we hire, it's the speed at which we cycle through and get to the right people. Sergey Brin was asked, do you lose sleep over Apple or Microsoft? And his answer was, no. I lose sleep over the guys in the garage working on the next disruptive startup. So most big companies, and this is agency theory, if you're working for a big company, you're going to aim for the middle of that risk-return histogram. And you're going to hit there, you're going to take your time, you've got the wind behind you, you've got branding, you've got deep pockets, you've got time. What we do is we aim way out to the right. And 9 out of 10 times, we land there. Not necessarily, this is with projects, with hiring, it's obviously not 9 out of 10. But the point is, if you aim way out there, you're going to end up here a lot of the time on the left. And what happens is, as long as you hold on to the good stuff on the right and pretty much weed out the mistakes, then you can cycle through a lot quicker. And your average becomes better than what the big guys do. And so the same can apply to the way you build values, to the way you run projects. An example, Howard Schultz was asked, how come at Starbucks all the people that work for you smile? How do you get all these people? How do you train them to do that? He said, it's real simple. We hire people who smile. And so again, that's cycling fast. So fail fast, learn fast, and that applies to values as well. So we have a name for C players in our business. We call them sunflowers. At the top of every company, you have A players. It's too naked up there. You cannot hide if you guys are all A players. You can't run a business. It's too transparent up there. Where C players end up is the middle, and they block the middle. And they're like sunflowers. We call it, and it's common language within our business, ABCDs. We use them all the time. We use the word sunflower as well. Sometimes it's misused. But a sunflower, where does a sunflower always face? The sun. So imagine you're at the top. The sunflower is spending all their time looking good in front of you. So that's what a lot of their effort is, like a sunflower. What grows underneath a sunflower? Sunflower creates way too much shade, and nothing but weeds grow underneath the sunflower. And that's the problem, is that with a sunflower, you may get A players in at the bottom of the company, new hires, but no A player in the right mind will stick around long enough. So beware of the sunflower. And like I said earlier, you know the sunflowers in your life. They're all people who you've worked for and not people who work for you, because if they're underneath you, you probably don't see them. So I'm gonna try something here. I hope it works. I need 4 volunteers. I'm not gonna embarrass you. Just walk up to the stage. The first 4 people walk up to the stage. Why don't you stand up on the stage? So I need one more. Okay. Okay. I like the order you're in. So why don't the 3 of you stand in line like this, and you stand between. Yeah. And what's your name?
I'm Elner.
Elner, I'm your boss. Okay. I'm at the top of the pyramid. I'm an A player. I can only be an A player, right? Because I'm the boss. You're a sunflower. So I look at you, and what do I see?
You see a confident person. Everything's great. Everything's working.
I see an A player. I've got an A player here because he's dancing. He's doing everything he needs to do. He's blocking all the bad stuff. The good stuff's coming through, but you're taking credit for it. So I see an A player, even though I've got a sunflower C player in my middle management. So our relationship works. In fact, he spends most of his time on this, making this work. Now, you're Oded, you're an A player. You just joined the business, and you work for Elnar. What's your relationship like?
Probably despise him after a month.
You hate him. Exactly. And what's Elnar telling me about you?
That he doesn't tell you anything about me, actually.
And he takes credit for your work, and he probably says, you know what, Oded, I'm probably going to break him. He's probably not going to last very long. We'll see how it goes. So I've got an A player. I don't even know he's an A player. I've got a C player I think is an A player. And if you are a true A player, like you said, you'll leave because you take control of your destiny. You say, wait a minute, this isn't for me, so leave. So we've just lost our A player. And I don't know that because Elnar has told me, yeah, he's worthless anyway. And in fact, a lot of the work he was doing, he's taking credit for. So now, your name?
Chris.
Chris is a B player. And what's your relationship like?
Oh, he's a great guy. Well, average.
He's not doing his work. He's got the values, but he's not performing.
Well, but I think there's hope in him, so I'm helping him out.
Realistically, you're a nice guy. That's not how it plays out. The way it plays out is, you're a sunflower. You've got a B player there. Are you gonna move him to A and tell him, look, we need to make an A player out of you. We're a team. We're not a family. We're a disruptive business. You're not gonna do that. What you're gonna do is you're gonna constantly threaten him. You're gonna constantly tell Chris that he's worthless and he's not performing and he's gonna lose his job. But you'll never do something about it.
But what am I going to tell you about him?
Oh, you're going to tell me I'm working on Chris. He's not very good, but I'm working on him. Now, Chris, so you're going to bully him constantly. Why are you going to bully him? Because you can, and it feels good. Okay? And Chris is going to hate coming to work. And the more you bully him, the more confidence he loses. And the more confidence he loses, the less likely he is to leave and go find another job. So 4 or 5 years later, Chris is still coming to work. And the more that cycle goes, the more he turns into a zombie. He hates work. He's doing nothing about it. And yet, Monday mornings, he's got to drag himself to work. And he's useless to the company because he's lost all confidence. So we've got a zombie. And then we've got Stephen. Stephen is a C player. He's a small C. You're a big C. What's your relationship like?
I guess the same as with B.
No. He's your mini-me. As long as he knows he's a small C, you're going to get along. So he's your eyes and ears. He's telling you about what happened to Oded. He's telling you about... He's mimicking everything you do, but he knows his place. As long as he knows his place, it's okay. You're a small C, it's fine. And so you guys are going to be chums. How are you going to treat Chris?
I'll probably take his lead.
Yeah, you bully him. Why are you going to bully Chris? Why are you going to bully Chris?
Because I know
Because it feels good. So think about this. We've got an organization where the entire middle is turning into C, B's and C's, and I'm sitting at the top of the business thinking, I've got a bunch of A players. Yeah, I've got some stragglers, but more or less, we're right. It's worse. It's like driving off a cliff and you don't know it's coming. So this is why it's so important to, as soon as you find that you've got a C player, getting rid of them. And with B players, making sure, and all this sounds negative, but there's a very positive side to it as well. Because the day you find yourself at a conference table surrounded by A players, you can create magic. And that's when you really know you've got it right. And I'm going to leave with that.
Great, thank you.
Hi. Just quickly, from your example, you were saying you have to get rid of the C players, but you were saying from above you can't see who they are and it's hard to identify them. How would you suggest doing that? Is that taking more advice or listening more to the people lower down in the organization and asking them how they feel about their management?
That's very helpful. We do that. It's easier if you have an HR person so that they can open up more. When you can't afford, with my first businesses, I had to be the HR person, and I didn't get as much out of people as I do with my recent businesses, where the HR person head of HR was the first hire. If you can afford it, that's a huge. It changes everything because you can get the information seeping through. On B players as well, you may have B player bosses that are disliked and so on. When you don't have that luxury, it's as soon as you see something that's not right, it's probably not right. Because values are something that you're programmed, you're wired, you're hardwired for it by the time you're in your 20s. As soon as you see that it's not right, it's probably not right. I don't know if that helps you. And then there's a gray area too. I'm making it all black and white. I mean, how big does that have to be before you take action?
Sophie, behind you, there's just right behind you.
Thank you. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on approaching a flat organizational structure for medium-sized businesses to get around this middleman who's blocking talent and progress?
All my organizations are flat. It's 3 levels to the CEO. But flat means it makes it a very wide span of control too. So there's places to hide when it's flat as well. It's just farther out. Again, this is not an easy thing. It's I got you guys to disagree earlier. The acting on it is much more difficult than actually the theory of it. Flat is definitely easier. There's less places to hide, but it doesn't eliminate the problem. Does that answer your question?
I'll take a question. I'm going to take a question here at the front.
Hi there. It seems to me that identifying the B's and C's is the issue here. Is there any techniques that you would suggest to processes that you've put in place to speed up that process? Because as you know, if you wait 6 months, it could be damaged in the business.
The B's, you know who they are, because if you're measuring things, if you have metrics, KPIs that are meaningful to what people are doing, and you're aligning people to where the way they're measured is relevant to what they're doing, and that's sometimes difficult to do, you'll identify them pretty quickly. It's the human emotional part that's difficult with B's. And doing this up front is the best place to do it when you hire them. So if they know the score, if they know the model, if they know they can't be a B, it makes that conversation a lot easier. In fact, they leave you before you actually take action if you play it right. The C's are like a cancer and you don't see them. It's why you have to take action the minute you realize you've got a C player. Don't wait. And there's no good time to do it. Don't convince yourself, oh, they're the only ones who know the system. They're the only ones who know the customer. They're counting on that. Cut your losses. Move on. Do it legally. Do it properly. And we use an external agency for that. And I've hardly ever been to tribunal. And when I have, I've won. Do it right. Play by the rules. But get them out of your company.
We'll take one last question. Alan.
Hi. How do you recruit for values when the urgent need, particularly in a tech startup, is usually for a skill set?
That's an excellent question, and a follow-up to that is, well, the right answer is hire for the future. But if you hire for the future, you need someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and do the work that you need today. And that's a slightly, we're going off topic from values here, but that's something that I've spent a lot of time on. And it's the people that are most needed in the early phase of a company are very often, those people cannot stretch and grow fast enough to become what you need later. It's pretty sad, but A players very often become B players as the company leaves them behind. And that's a management challenge. You try to push them, help them, but there are situations where they're holding the company back. And it's everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to be part of a startup that goes places. What they don't realize is all the risk to their careers with that growth and that change. Those who can adapt to that change have fantastic careers. I think that a lot of people can't stay with that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's one of the most difficult challenges we have as high-growth businesses.
Great. Thank you very much, George.